Hello and welcome to the WARC Podcast. My name's David Tiltman. It's day 5 of Cannes Lions. We've made it. We've been bringing you highlights from across the festival every day on the WARC Podcast. So if you haven't had a chance to catch up already, pour yourself a glass of rosé wherever you are, as our last special episode today is one not to be missed. And although the festival is winding down, at WARC we're just getting started. Members can expect our wrap-up report from Cannes Lions next week with all the insights you need to know. And here on the podcast we'll have interviews with CMOs, marketing experts and everybody else we've talked to over the past week going live in the coming weeks. So if you haven't already, now is a great time to tap follow wherever you get your podcasts. So today we're going to be talking about whether we should go big or pursue a lots of little strategy. And we'll be doing that with effectiveness expert Les Binet and Mel Arrow, CEO of McCann London. We'll be talking about the challenges and opportunities of building a new category with Coinbase's CMO Catherine Feardon and VP brand Gareth K. And finally, we'll be getting an overview of some of the effectiveness trends from the festival and the Creative Effectiveness Lines. We'll be doing that with Gurdeep Puri and Emma de la Fosse from the Effectiveness Partnership. But before we meet our first guests, let's get to the headlines.
As brands navigate pricing pressure and economic uncertainty, marketing effectiveness matters more than ever. Circana research shows that continued marketing investment helps brands reduce price sensitivity by strengthening consumer demand and brand equity. With its AI-powered solution Liquid Mix, Circana helps marketers balance short-term goals with long-term growth and make more confident decisions in rapidly changing market conditions. Download the latest insights today at circana.com/walk. A quick news wrap from the final day of the Cannes Lions Festival with me, Anna Hamill, Senior Editor at WARC. So, what's making headlines today? The awards, of course, are now wrapping up. Last night, the festival awarded AXA France the Creative Effectiveness Grand Prix for its campaign 3 Words, which involved the language insurance contracts use to help domestic violence victims rebuild their lives. And more good news, the full case studies for the Creative Effectiveness Lions are now available for you to read. So if you have a WARC.com subscription, be sure to check those out in full and learn from award-winning work. And there were some provocative words from creative icon Sir John Hegarty yesterday. Sir John did not hold back, and I have to give an explicit language warning here before I quote him, but opening a Cannes Lions keynote with the quote, "Are we all fucked?" says something from someone who's been an industry leader for over 50 years now. In his view, advertising is failing because people have fallen out of love with creative and will happily pay to avoid ads. Brands, he says, have perfected the art of stalking, not inspiring. So this is some tough love for the industry from Sir John. In his view, the ad industry needs to take inspiration from the evolution of the entertainment industry to capture attention in new ways and restructure to focus on bottom-up creativity rather than top-down. Ultimately, he said the industry needs to understand that it needs to be loved more to succeed. Powerful food for thought there. And the last story on our agenda today is some new research from System 1, WPP Media and TikTok presented yesterday on the stage. This puts numbers behind what makes creator marketing work, based on more than 1,200 TikTok ads made by creators and brands across 6 markets. The key finding to remember here is that the engagement rate has no relationship to brand memory, and creative quality matters more than creator fame. And the brands getting it right are the ones planning for brand memory, not reach. Done well, creator content can encode memory more effectively than TV. But done on the wrong terms, brands get reach and engagement numbers that ultimately mean nothing. These stories are brought to you by WARC News, our daily email newsletter. Go to warc.com/feed to read about these stories in much more detail. That's all for now.
So over the past few years, as both media and creative fragmentation has accelerated, we've seen a core debate emerge. Should brands be chasing big brand-building moments or continuous activation across diverse communities, what might be called lots of little? Or is there an answer somewhere in the middle? Earlier on the Cannes Lions stage, we heard from effectiveness author, consultant and marketing professor Les Binet, McCann London CEO Mel Arrow and Adrian Adaramoy from TikTok to present sort of a bit of a debate between these differing viewpoints. And it was called Go Big or Just Keep Posting. Les and Mel join us now. So Les, Mel, welcome back to the WARC Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Fresh off the stage. We've literally brought you straight up here,
I'm
think.
not sure fresh is the word we use
Yeah,
in
it's
this
sweaty
heat.
off the
No,
stage.
not by Thursday in Cannes, no. Now, let's just start with this big idea, Les, because you're pushing this big versus small thing. Is big versus small the same as long versus short? Or is it something fundamentally different?
No, it's not the same as long versus short, although there is a slight relationship. So the new report, which I wrote with a guy called Will Davis, which is
this was the IPA.
Yeah,
the
IPA
report,
publication, a fantastic read and very reasonably priced.
It's free, isn't it?
It's free from the IPA. No, the thesis is that we've become so obsessed with efficiency in advertising that we've forgotten about the importance of scale, about needing to invest enough to get enough exposure, to reach enough people, to go broad enough, to use enough media, and to produce creative that people want to watch and will spend enough time with, and that coheres together into something that is more than just a bunch of little ads. You'll notice the word enough keeps coming up there, that we do too much small scale stuff that isn't enough to move the dial.
And this is a budget question as well as an allocation question, isn't it?
It is, I would say it's three things. One is about budget and all the things that go with budget, spending enough money, having enough exposures, putting enough of the budget into media and stuff like that. So, and then there's the question of how you allocate that budget across channels and making sure you've got enough channels and you've got the right balance between channels. And then it's also about the actual creative content, making sure that you've got the stuff that is, big enough to affect people emotionally and to, create memories that influence their behaviour. So, budget, media and creative.
And we'll come on to some of those things in a moment. But we don't have the third person in your presentation here, who was Adrian from TikTok. But I guess his starting point was more around, what has been called a lots of little approach. Tom Roach and Grace Kite both sort of very famously talked about that. But that is more about building outcomes, brands, whatever it is, from multiple different little things that kind of add up. Mel, I mean, you're on the agency side, so you must be engaging with some of this kind of at the front lines, if you like. What's the tension that you're seeing actually in your kind of day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, we deliberately staged a debate, a sort of artificial, let's pit one against the other. And in reality, most of our clients are operating in both of these models and want to understand how they can form one holistic whole. So I thought Adrian was really compelling when he was talking about, we're all always on consumers now. We at the purchase funnel has collapsed, and anyone who has bought something, seen something on Instagram and bought it straight away, that's me, or TikTok shop, as I'm sure he would prefer to talk about, knows that is true. But I think it is about both, not or. I think, obviously, we're going to talk about some of the common ground areas, I think, but I do believe in big ideas with scale and reach and brands that consistently are coherent over time. And then social has its role in topping up that message and refreshing that message and reminding people of that message. So I think, our clients are looking for ways to bring those things together holistically.
To some degree, is this about what your starting point is? Because it feels a little bit like if you're starting from the small, it then gets very hard to go big.
I don't know if you caught that in the presentation because I know you had to leave before the end. But
sorry, Les, I did have to come here to the podcast studio. But I only missed 3 minutes.
No, that wasn't a criticism. But I'm making the point that I did make a point towards the end that if you've already built a brand, then you can do quite a lot with small reminders. And in fact, big brands do that.
Yes, I did hear
so
that.
I used the example of Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola do the big Christmas ads and all those other things. And they've done all of that stuff for, not just decades, but generations now. Because of that, every time you see a little Coca-Cola logo, even a small reminder will reignite all those existing brand memories. So didn't McDonald's do some stuff with the golden arches?
Oh, they're always using it.
Yeah.
They're always using it.
But we're just showing like
a little bit of the art. But it's the colours, the red and the...
So
the
that's
red.
a very good example of something where you can do that because you put in the spade work of, building the brand. It would be very difficult for McDonald's to build up the brand just by showing the arch as the starting point. I went to
So it's interesting you use McDonald's because I was presenting on Monday with Tariq Hassan, who was the McDonald's CMO in the States, and this is exactly the sort of thing he made. They got, this is going back a few years, but they got kind of lost in the small.
Yes.
And they felt they had to swing back into the big.
Around about 2019, they reached out to this consultant. What was his name?
Yeah.
Les Binet.
I did hear you involved in that in some way, actually, yes.
So there is a role for, because part of the Lots of Little's thesis is, the need for multiple media. I totally agree with that. And that the idea that, lots of different exposures add up to something. Totally agree with that. It's the idea that just really short exposures, like, 2 seconds, is the way you build things up. I don't think that's right. I think you can remind people about a brand in 2 seconds, and you can do the performance marketing bit like that. So this is right at the beginning. You said, "Is this about long and short?" And this is where it does dovetail. If you've got, say, paid search, or even classified advertising in the old days, you're talking to the people who are actually interested and want to buy something. Now, most people will scroll past or leaf past all that stuff and ignore it, and very, very short exposures. But if you're in the market for whatever it is,
you're in that 5%.
then you only need that, immediate exposure, and you go, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So the little, very short exposures have two functions: reminders for brands that already have been built, and performance, reaching out to people who are inherently interested in what you have to say.
Great. Mel, you were sort of sat in the middle of this, and Adrian did land a few blows.
I particularly liked it when he referred to me as a veteran.
Yes.
Yeah, and he also
did repeat that, actually.
He did talk about legacy media.
Yes.
I thought, you young whippersnapper, you.
Where do you, again, back with your sort of practitioner hat on, when you came out at the end of this process, do you feel you've got more of a handle on how these two things can play together, or do you feel there's still sort of real tension?
I think they have to play together. I think most brands need them to, and it's an artificial divide to kind of try and pull them apart. I was interested most of all in the things that Adrian and Les were agreeing on. So first and foremost, the high bar for attention, regardless of where that attention is sort of earned, whether it's in more traditional advertising, whether it is in social and communities like TikTok, you have to earn it. It has to be big, beautiful, creative in advertising. It still has to be very compelling, whether it's in social. Or just
inherently interesting because you were interested in buying that thing right now.
Well, yes, very much so. I think the other thing that was compelling about Adrian's point of view, I'm sort of trying to represent his point of view because he's not here, is that kind of relevance piece. I think brands need to learn to switch their message a little bit from when they are advertising and talking, broadcasting and talking about themselves, versus going into some of those spaces like TikTok and creating smaller moments of interaction, because then you're playing by the community rules. Exactly.
Exactly.
So that's also really interesting. But I love that the debate is happening. I love that we're talking about this.
Now, I want to pick up on because actually I think there was a thing, when you just jot something down in your notebook, and I'm going to have to come back to that. And it was about, I think, was it coherence?
Yes.
More than
like
consistency.
That's Orlando.
No, it was Orlando.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
But that seemed like an interesting thread to pull on. So tell us what you mean by that.
So this is not me. This is Orlando Wood from System One. I've had a couple. I've seen him talk about this twice this week at Cannes, and it does strike me as an important, if you like, development on from simply talking about consistency. So last year at Cannes, System One. So Andrew Tyndall, Sarah Carter, and I went on stage together to talk about the importance of long-term consistency and consistency across channels, and how big, long, consistent campaigns tend to be more effective than anything else. But what Orlando is saying, and I think this is a clever nuance, is that actually the really important thing is consistency. Coherence. That all the things you do add up to something that, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, which is a phrase that Adrian used on stage just now. I think that's absolutely right. And consistency in the sense of, for example, always using the same distinctive brand assets or fluent devices, whatever you want to call them, and having messages that are consistent, similar, saying the same things, using the same style, blah, 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 blah. That's a form of coherence. But you can also be coherent in the sense that by being yourself, by, a coherent personality as opposed to simply just saying the same thing. And I think somebody, maybe Orlando again, but somewhere saying that this is often easier when you've got, for example, founder-led companies where the founder has a vision and a personality and he knows exactly what the brand stands for, even if he can't put it into one word,
or codify it, or
So I think that's an interesting build, and where that fits with what Adrian was saying is, you may, for example, be saying different things to different people in different places, different communities, lots of little, forms of communication, but as long as they all add up to something which is consistent and coherent, then that it may not matter that you're it's not just sort of saying the same USP again and again.
It's not about making one ad and just running it. But that comes back to sort of starting point, doesn't it? Because you have to know who to take your person. You have to kind of have a degree of self-awareness.
Well, this is why I think startups and founder-led or family-led businesses often have that, because the thing is, actually, often it's very hard to articulate. I mean, I kind of know what Les Binet is, but I couldn't tell you in words. We know what is our own true, authentic self and our personality, but actually, you couldn't write that down as the 6 things that make David Tiltman. It's not that simple.
Yeah, no, I like that. Mel, does that give you and your team something to work with?
Yeah, actually, we've been talking a lot recently. Our social team talks about brand body language in social, and I think it's interesting thinking about how we bring these two perspectives together into something more holistic. It's actually not just what you say or how you look, it's how you behave as well, and all of those things adding up together to fill the small and the big in that kind of model.
Yeah. I agree, and so potentially the danger with, for example, so personalised advertising, for example, where there's a danger you could be trying to be all things to all people. For you, we're the brand that is X. For you, we're the brand that is Y.
Or dynamic pricing or all of those things.
I mean, I actually remember this in the context of somebody was trying to do something where the idea was that we'd use personalised advertising in the context of football. They would say, if you're an Arsenal fan, we're Arsenal fans too, and if you're a Chelsea fan, we're totally
that
Chelsea
work.
all the way. Now, if a human being behaves like that, you think you're a lying psychopath, and that because you've got no centre, you've got I'm just a people pleaser. So there is this danger that if you fragment things and personalise things, or for example, if you working with influencers and creators, and they've all got their own vision of what you stand for, and it's all different, then the whole thing falls apart.
That's why coherence is a really interesting word. It pulls all of your body language has to be coherent with what you say, with how you look. Like, actually, there's more kind of fronts for brands to kind of get right now.
And in a funny sort of way, relentless consistency. If a person went to a party and just, on the one hand, if everyone he spoke to said, I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm a Chelsea fan, you'd think, okay, lying psychopath. But if a person went to a party and just every conversation was, let me tell you about my A-level results, and that was the only thing they said, you go, okay, you have a really narrow personality and you're really boring. So
interesting. I love the idea that the psychopath test is a
psychopathic brands. Orlando hopefully will be very pleased. Orlando, when I see you again, can you give me a small amount of money for promoting your new idea?
That was a great place to leave it. Les, Mel, thank you so much. I think this is, this has been a really big debate over the past year, and I feel like this has, helped us move a little bit further on and given us some new ideas to think about.
Good,
thank you.
The industry is full of opinions, but brands don't make decisions based on opinions. They make them based on evidence they can trust. Partner with the leading industry authority on marketing effectiveness to make your case. Lions Advisory brings together decades of trusted expertise from WARC, Cannes Lions, Effie, and Contagious to create industry-defining thought leadership. From crafting the narrative to amplifying it at scale and placing it in front of key decision makers. So your story doesn't just add to the conversation, it defines it. Learn more at lions.co/thought leadership.
So over the past decade, some of the growth in the ad market has been led by what you might call new economy brands, fast growth categories, thinking things like crypto, GLP-1, really sort of transformational technologies and products. So what's it like to be a marketer in a company like that, where you're not only experiencing growth, but the category is mushrooming and having sort of a roller coaster ride on the way? What does it actually take to build a leadership position in a category like that? And how do marketing needs change as those companies grow? Well, I'm delighted to say we're joined by two leading marketers from Coinbase, which many of our listeners will know as being one of the leaders in the crypto category. In crypto, we had that initial boom. Then we had the crypto winter. Coinbase launched its first ever Super Bowl campaign several years ago, and it's been back in Fosse in Cannes Lions this year. So I am joined by Catherine Feardon, Chief Marketing Officer at Coinbase, and Gareth Kay, who is VP of Brand. And they join us fresh from the Cannes Lions stage, where they shared an insider look at how Coinbase evolved its marketing approach as the crypto category matured. Kat and Gareth, welcome to the WARC Podcast.
Thanks, David.
Look, you've already had a great week. We're recording this before the end, where you still might win some more, but you've won a bunch of golds and Grand Prix. How are you feeling?
Delighted, happy. I think the team's hard work got paid off really well, but it's great to be recognised by really good juries and a year of very good work. So we feel very grateful.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been great to have so much of the team here to actually go up on stage and receive the awards right alongside our agency partners. So we're feeling really proud.
Now, I'm going to come back to the kind of role of creativity in your marketing. But I guess, if I sort of turn to your session, the brief we threw to you was to talk to us about how brands in kind of emerging, not just emerging, but like insanely emerging categories operate in terms of marketing and what role marketing plays in driving or supporting or maintaining that growth. I mean, you were talking about regulatory issues, market collapses, financial fraud at competitors, which kind of tarnished the whole category. So just give me a sort of top-line summary of how Coinbase developed a marketing culture that could flex through all of that sort of crypto boom, winter, and sort of comeback.
Yeah, well, I'd say that the cyclical nature of crypto makes us very, very robust and quite rugged, actually. I have only been at the company for about a year, so I started in September, not quite. And Gareth actually has been working on some of the most meaningful Coinbase work since long before I started. He was working as a freelancer and consulting with the company for many, many years, from probably the moment they started developing.
Prior to when you joined.
Right, prior to when he joined. And I thought it was great work where you weren't really seeing anything else like this in crypto, where all of these companies are often a little bit beholden to the cycles of crypto prices just going up and down. But I'd say that Coinbase did a really great job of just being able to grin and bear it and build through that. And I think you'd be surprised to hear that, like, our executive team talks pretty often about how excited they are to build during winter because it provides such focus for the company.
So that they built during that sort of, and did they have a sort of this is a good time to build?
Absolutely.
Because it's going to bounce back.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much grit that comes through that. And from a marketing point of view, often we find that type of cyclical nature, when you have to batten down the hatches, it actually sort of breeds creativity. Those constraints require you to focus more, prioritize less, and just really, really kind of trim what you're focused on, which is really interesting. But I'd love to know, Gareth, you've been here longer than I, so it'd be interesting to see how you think about it.
I think there's a kind of an interesting mix we have, Kat, and I agree with everything you said. I think there's an interesting mix of us being incredibly flexible and able to do the scrappy stuff and respond to changes in the market condition. Be prepared to make work quickly. Be prepared to shelve work if it's just not the right time for work to come out. And I think one of the smart things the team always has done is build a library of work that gives you a set of assets that you can use when the conditions are kind of right for that moment. So having that library is really, really important. But I think also, apart from the kind of scrappy stuff, is to be prepared to go and do the epic stuff, by which I mean sometimes big media moments. But I think also really importantly, the decision that was made to actually go, this is about creating a category, not about building a brand. And I think that sense of we have to build the case for crypto and help people understand why crypto makes sense in their life and be the thought leader inside the category was an early decision that was made, a brave decision, frankly, given some of the market conditions. But in the long term, the medium to long term, I think has paid off spades.
So the opportunity you saw was to build category leadership, drive the category and be at the forefront of that.
Which meant you have to go and immediately look for an enemy that is bigger than your direct competitors. So it's less about being very myopic and saying, hey, what were FTX doing at a certain point of time? What are Binance doing now? And instead thinking about how is crypto able to offer a solution to bigger problems that people feel, begin to help them understand that it's not just an asset class like Bitcoin. It's actually about a technology that is there to go and update what we believe was a financial system that was broken. I think
that was the enemy.
That was the enemy we found, was just like that big pain point, and find that kind of, enemy that's bigger than yourself. And I think, there was just some staggering data that came out where we think people don't particularly like the financial system as it stands because there's no choice and no alternative. But it was staggering to find that 87% of Americans felt the financial system needed to be updated. They were sick and tired of slow-moving money, having to spend your money to move your money somewhere, of bank opening hours, of the lack of advice that was available. So it just struck us as this real opportunity to think about ourselves as a true technology brand, a brand that's a better way of doing something, and really update what was an incredibly antiquated system.
Until a few months ago, maybe, the advertising Coinbase might most be associated with is that Super Bowl spot from, was it 3-4 years?
About 4 years ago, I think now, yeah, thereabouts.
And if listeners can't remember it, it's quite easy to describe, unusually. It was just a QR code bouncing around a screen.
Like a DVD screensaver.
Exactly, like a DVD screensaver, which caused a lot of headlines at the time. We don't need to go into the whole background of that particular ad, but just talk to me about what the company learned from that process and how that has then sort of evolved the thinking to now when you're the creativity is great, as is shown by the lions you're picking up, but it's what you would expect to see from a creative brand.
Look, I think the QR code was evidence of the CEO and founder Brian Armstrong's point of view, which is we're on the frontier. We should not play by the same rules as everyone else. And actually, he's a brilliant client, so to speak, because he demands us being unconventional. If we go in there with work that feels like work that is out there at the moment that other financial service companies make, he's not going to go and give it the thumbs up to go out into the world. So we have to go and do things that are different. So, in the Super Bowl, you begin to go and look at things and go, what has not really been done in the Super Bowl beforehand? So doing something that was a very DR-like mechanism was something that was very fresh and very different and has been aped a few times since. I think this year, making the very obvious insight that 2/3 of Americans watch the Super Bowl together, not alone, but yet no communication is designed for that moment of togetherness. The obvious answer, therefore, is karaoke. And Isle of Any kind of just came back with this idea early on, and it was just like, that is an absolute simple, powerful insight, and just lets us be that kind of challenger, unconventional brand. So I think there's always been a thread of unconventionality. I think even when you look at, something that feels more narrative and classic in style, like Your Way Out, there is still delivered in a very unconventional way. We're basically giving people an idea about the promise of the company, but we're doing it in a way which uses the analogy of a NPC and being trapped inside a system you want to escape. But rather than just making it in CGI, we went, if this is about the real world, then we should build this world. And that was kind of, I think, the magic unlock for it. So not only did it stand out in the Oscars, because it felt very filmic, but when we released behind the scenes, what was it, 2 days later, Kat? Something like that, it got this other massive boost in social because people were like, oh, I kind of thought that what was going on in the spots. But then they realized it actually was. And that thing was kind of quite a magical moment. So I think there is a red line of just always being unconventional and unexpected in everything we do, whether it's frankly growth work or, big epic moments in culture.
Catherine, talk to me about the role marketing plays within what I guess is a very technology-oriented company. Is marketing given like a proper seat at the table? Or do you feel like a sort of growth driver in that organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that's really interesting since starting at Coinbase, as Gareth had mentioned, our founder CEO, Brian Armstrong, he actually cares very, very deeply about our brand and marketing work. And he's an engineer by trade, but he cares a lot about how we show up. And he actually himself has impeccable taste. So he's a great person to riff ideas with. And we take his feedback to heart. He does empower us to be the decision makers, but he really kind of demands that we mean what we say. And he consistently pushes us to be bolder, be louder, take bigger risks. Like there's so many times where we come to him with an idea and he's like, you know what, I like that idea, but take a bigger swing. And I have to say, like in the position that we're in, it's a phenomenal platform to market from, right? Because your CEO is essentially providing like incredible air cover for you, right? To everyone, to other employees at the company, to the board, to basically make sure that we're really, really doing something unconventional. And I think that harkens back to something that's pretty true to crypto, upon which we were founded, right? Which is that crypto is unconventional. Crypto is like the ultimate disruptor of the financial system. And as such, our marketing has to sort of parallel that, right? And what's interesting about our marketing strategy, too, is that just like both Super Bowl commercials that we've launched, we always invite the customer to participate with us. Like we try to have participatory activities that people can take part in so that it doesn't really feel like a brand talking at you. It actually feels a lot more like a brand who's inviting you to experience something. And that's been really important to basically everything that we've leveraged in marketing so far.
I think there's quite a lot of CMOs in Cannes this year who would love a CEO like that, who's telling you to take bigger swings. We're hearing lots of people go the other way, unfortunately. Where's the market now? So, in terms of crypto, how would you sort of characterize the market? Are we up, down, sideways, stabilizing? What's the sort of situation at the moment?
Well, it's actually interesting. Like we're in a winter in some respects because a lot of people just associate, where we are in the cycle with the price of Bitcoin, right? Because that's the most popular coin. And I'd say that it's definitely seen higher times, but there are a number of things in crypto that are actually at all-time highs, like things like prediction markets and other things are actually really doing quite well. Stable coins, for example, are absolutely spiking and have never been more popular. And so I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to claim that like we're in a bitter winter. We've definitely seen far worse. And I suppose that's why so many people at Coinbase in particular are a little bit unfettered by this. They're kind of like, all right, yeah, we've been here before, but it's actually been far, far more drastic. So if anything, this just allows us to really, again, just kind of like focus on, doing fewer things, but doing them really, really excellently.
I know you were at pains to point out that what you weren't presenting today is a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a sort of, it's not like it's, and I guess that is going to be typical of companies in these sorts of markets because, you do have to sort of roll with the punches, react, make calls quite quickly. But I guess to other brands, whether they're in similar growth markets or in lower growth markets, what have you learned that you think could be transferred? Are there 2 or 3 sort of nuggets where you go, you know what, regardless of what brand I end up working on in the future, I learned something really valuable there that I can plug into to my work.
I guess I always go back to the maxim I live by, which is by of all people, Judy Garland, which is always be a first-rate version of yourself rather than a second-rate version of someone else. And I think at the moment, the danger is we've got so much data in the world now, so much ability to observe human behavior. It's very easy to be so consumer-led that you all become the same thing. So you have this smooth path. It's a lot of UX is designed to do that. I think what gets really interesting to think about what are the principles and kind of like guiding beliefs that are the operating system for your brand, and think about how you can bring those to life. There may be some friction there. There may be some tension there. But I think that's kind of the big first thing I would say is, even if you're trying to go, I'm a challenger brand or I'm an emerging brand in a frontier, category, you're probably going to have to go and say, actually, who are we first? Understand why you started this company. Like one of the biggest things you can do is talk to the founder. Brian will tell you why he started this company and what he started it for. And you go and take that essence and go and think about how can you scale that story to us. I think that's a really important one.
Yeah, and I'd say, it's really interesting working in crypto, or a company that's founded in crypto, because sort of inherent to crypto is counterculture. So counterculture is like a little bit embedded into our entire company and the way that we operate. It's all about like bucking tradition, which is really interesting. And when you're doing brand storytelling from that vantage point, I would say that our brand sits at this really interesting nexus of basically big tech and big finance. And these are 2 industries that don't exactly give people the warm and fuzzies, which means that you have to be extra creative about how you connect with people on a human level. And I mean, one of the things that drew me to Coinbase was how well they started doing that. Even long before I started, I was like, this is incredible work. It was head-turning work, and it really made you stop and pause and think, whoa, was that from Coinbase? And that was the type of work that I wanted to be doing, and working with, the excellent people that have started in the past year, including Gareth, including Joe Staples, our head of production, Patrick Marzullo, just like really world-class creative thinkers that have kind of worked on all products, but never something quite this disruptive, and then being able to kind of define that category together.
And I think the final thing I would certainly say I've learned from this is making sure you pick a big enough enemy and try and find a problem that is persistent and pervasive to a large group of people, and then understand how you can uniquely solve that. And I think we've got this kind of like simple, or maybe it's hopefully not simplistic, but simple equation, which is around, be compelling by finding that persistent, pervasive problem, but then answer it with solutions that only crypto technology can provide. And that way you become, I think, very meaningful. You're authentic to who you are. You become a category of one in many ways. And I think that idea of offering these doorways out of the system just grows from that. And the great thing with that we've discovered is it helps us remove that barrier between what is defined as brand marketing versus product marketing. At the end of the day, a brand is only as strong as its weakest link. And I think the way we can kind of really uplift into a bigger narrative our product stories, inform future product, which is super exciting.
I was going to say that, because that is a natural route then into using that insight across the company, not just as a sort of tool into creative communications.
I think we're kind of at the forefront of that now. I think there's new products coming in the future. Somebody announced last week in an event in New York, like tokenized stocks, like some of our loan products. We're really excited to have the first crypto-backed mortgage. It's going to be really interesting because it's going to allow people, hopefully have more people get access to actually fulfilling the American dream, or the dream of most people, which is to own a home. Those are the things that get me excited, get me out of bed every morning to go and work on this. Probably more so than kind of, I guess, the kind of classic misnomer of a Bitcoin equals crypto. It's much, much bigger than that.
Catherine, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been really fun working with a team that truly understands that, like, the symbiotic relationship between product and brand. You know, like, brand is product is brand, and the two are working in service of each other and kind of can't stand alone. And I think once you understand that, you can tell incredible brand and marketing stories, and that's what we're trying to do.
Catherine, Gareth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, David, for your time.
Thanks, David.
So this week in Cannes, we've heard a lot about effectiveness, what works, what doesn't, and the impact of the ever-changing media landscape. Today we're joined by Gurdeep Puri, co-founder of the Effectiveness Partnership and the House of Creative Impact, and Emma de la Fosse, co-founder and chief creative officer at the House of Creative Impact. They've been keeping a close eye on the big narratives in Cannes this week, including the big winners from the Creative Effectiveness Lions last night. So Emma, Gurdeep, welcome to the WARC Podcast.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess let's just start with some of the narratives you've been seeing this year. I know there's one around sort of digital media and memorability that's been cropping up a little bit, a few different sessions. Gurdeep, why don't you kick us off here?
Thank you, David. Yes, I think that there is a lot of conversation happening on the Cosette and in the various hotels and rooms and in the various halls at this festival this year between marketers and agencies about how the industry's changed over the years, and in terms of there's so much digital content out there now, how there's a lack of resonance, memorability, durability of the work. I mean, years ago, harder to measure traditional channels had a lot more memorability to them and resonance as compared to what we now see as easier to measure digital channels, where we have, performance marketing metrics like reach, impressions, sort of being used further up the scale than where they should be. So I do think there is a frustration within marketing why they're not getting closer to the C-suite. And it's to do with what we're measuring and what is being considered to be acceptable as a demonstration of creative impact in our industry. And quite often we're looking at the wrong things.
What should we be looking at then?
So I think, yes, I mean, I'm not going to say they're not important. Of course, all KPIs are important. It's how you use them, pull them together. I do think reach, impressions and attribution have a place. But they're not at the top of the funnel. They're not the upstream metrics we should be looking at. I mean, they should ladder up to perceptual change, which should ladder up to behavior change. And when I see behavior, I mean an actual behavior change, like in the case of Pedigree or with AXA, the winners, the big winners from last
we'll get
night.
on to those winners in a moment. There's an issue, though, isn't there? We've seen it in some of the data we've seen during the week about just the sheer volume of content being produced. Are you seeing this, Emma? And just there's so much. I think we called it churn and burn earlier in the week.
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, back in the day when social media platforms were in their sort of they were fairly nascent and just kind of coming to the fore and becoming very popular, there was a way of creating content for those, which was kind of throw it at the wall, create a lot of stuff, throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and what sticks you put on the platform. I think now that's changed to just throw everything, and whether it sticks on the wall or not, stick it on the platform. It's because it's easier to do. It's because it's cheaper to do. Very few of these briefs go through a creative department. A lot of it is automated. But you'll see that the public's engagement with this kind of work is actually, it's really falling off. Memorability it has been in a steady decline since about 1984. I mean, less than 30% of CMOs actually think that the work they're creating is memorable, which is a bit of a worry. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's that again.
Less than 30% of CMOs think that the work they create is memorable.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, that's just something to ponder on. And I think, again, that kind of comes back to this sort of short-termism. And one of the things that helps people remember work is if, I mean, basically we're human beings, we're dealing with an awful lot of information. If the work you're seeing fits in with something that you already know about a brand, it helps you kind of file that information away, to categorize that information. If you're seeing different things that are kind of fairly random from that brand a lot of the time, they are going to be less memorable. It's much more difficult for your brain to kind of, tag the content, if you like. Yeah. So that's why I think anyway that you see a lot of this kind of churn and burn work on digital, on social media platforms, not having that kind of level of effectiveness that perhaps if they were treated more like each piece of work you do is a touch point for your brand. If marketers bore that in mind a bit more, I think that work would be more memorable.
And, that's compounded. If you look at the stuff we did together a few years ago, the marketing survey, it showed that at that time, 2 years ago, 75% of marketers struggled to rate their creative activities to anything commercial. I mean, when you compound it with the funnel of work that's going out now through digital, the kind of KPIs they're looking at to show what performance looks like, it's just making the situation worse.
It's really, Les Binet talked about this yesterday, about how these very, very short exposures work best if they're reminders. If you're trying to build from them, it's, it's not going to happen, is it? But they can work as reminders.
Reminders or part of something bigger.
Yes.
As in, if the social media content that you're creating fits into a larger campaign, it doesn't have to be an integrated campaign. It could be a purely social campaign. As long as it's a part of something bigger, I think it's when clients expect these posts that are doing these pieces of content almost to sort of stand alone. As I said, it's very difficult for the brain to tag that kind of information.
Yeah, we all know this. Marketing was once a big numbers game, and marketing contributed a big number to enterprise value. Then digital came along, and now we're in the small numbers game, and it's more tactical. And instead of top-line impact, marketing has a new master, bottom-line efficiency. And instead of growth, is now obsessing with budget protection. And instead of strategy, it has become mired in operational efficiency. And we're focusing on things like I said, reach impressions and attribution, when we should be looking at things like perceptual change, behavior change, and that relation to the commercial number at top, the incremental commercial number that the C-suite really worry about.
I want to get onto the creative effectiveness lines in a moment, but just let's talk about that gap between CMO and C-suite. It's been a consistent theme in some of the sort of closed door sessions I've heard with CMOs in. And it does feel like marketers are kind of trapped at the moment between the efficiency demands that are being placed upon them and their desire to be growth architects, creators of enterprise value. They want to play in that space, but they're finding it hard to resolve this tension between these two asks, I guess. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. And I think, you know what I'm like, David, I'm quite provocative about these sort of things. And I think, marketers were sold a dream years ago, and they were told that the biggest problem in our industry is waste, and the solution is digital. Mm-hmm. And they were given a set of metrics around it for digital. And I think there was a complacency there, thinking that's good enough. And we stepped away from the harder stuff, which was actually making the link between perceptual change and that result on commercial. And also, I think what is really important, and Emma will get into it on the winners, is great work needs an insight, right? Great work is memorable, and it comes from a great insight. And I think a lot of the time we've forgotten what a great insight is, and we work with observations instead of insights. Mm-hmm. So it is a swirl of things happening out there, leading us to where we are now.
Great. Let's look at the creative effectiveness line. So announced last night, some amazing work in there. The Grand Prix went to AXA for the 3 words campaign. You guys have all been poring over the case studies all morning. Tell me what stood out for you in this particular entry.
I'm actually happy this year. I mean, the Grand Prix went to the right case. the goals went to the right cases. I mean, AXA, I think, from when it won the Creative Award last year, well deserved, absolutely. And now they've managed to actually articulate the link between what they did and I mean, the commercial return is secondary here, obviously, because of what the case study is about. But the link between what they actually did in terms of creative and what effect it had in behavior is amazing. And there's a whole insight here, that there are 70% shortfall in places for people who've been abused to go to as a shelter, and an accommodation is not available. So how do we turn that around? So not only did they manage to do that, they actually increased the number of contracts for AXA, making number one insurance provider in France. I think is amazing.
So just so in case anybody doesn't know the campaign, this was about putting an additional 3 words into the contract, which covered households for essentially domestic abuse, and gave people suffering from that a way out.
Absolutely. And also, I think for me, the winners had one, and Emma will mostly talk more about this, is they story told the case beautifully. You want to read it from the very start. They explained what the problem was clearly. They explain the insight. They have proper objectives, what I call not, weak metrics, proper objective. They were going to create a behavior change by doing this. There was going to be an effect on the business, so they could carry on doing this. And then the demonstration effectiveness at the back end was brilliant.
Emma, what did you make of this one?
I loved this when I saw it last year. The reason I think that this is utterly brilliant is because it's not just about making a great advert, making a great, piece of creator content, whatever. It's actually using creativity and creative thinking to change a product. So during my career, I have seen, or, me and my colleagues have seen so many examples where actually what needs to be done is a change in the product. No amount of advertising will actually increase the sales or performance of that particular product or service, because there's something inherently lacking in it. Creative thinkers don't just come up with ads. Creative thinkers can be used to solve all manner of business problems. And what I love about this is that somebody has used creativity to come up with an idea to actually change the product and add those 3 words, which is "and domestic abuse." And just with those 3 words, they're giving women the means of escaping violence and abuse in their homes, because they can get some money and go and find somewhere else to rent or stay, because all the domestic abuse shelters are full up. They can't get into those. So I think that that's just a wonderful example of the bravery of a client who's actually willing to say, okay, let's work with, the agency and change the product for the better. And I'd love other brands, marketers to look to this and be inspired by it, and hopefully do the same thing.
There's a great anecdote about this particular case that was presented on stage at Most Contagious conference last year, and the CMO had already sold this into the CEO. So the CEO was like, "This is amazing." They had a sort of boardroom sort of meeting, and the CEO said, "Right, I want everybody to tell me why this is a bad idea, why we couldn't do it." And they went round the table. And, everybody says, well, it would be really difficult to provide all the shelters, for example, or, could we be legally challenged or whatever. So every single person fed back. And then the CEO said, right, you've now all listed out the things we need to resolve in order to get this done. And I thought that was just amazing. But I think it really just shows how the sort of CMO-CEO relationship is so important, because if you were trying to fight that out in the boardroom without that kind of backing, then it could have led...
Absolutely. So I think that these kind of world-changing ideas will need to go right up to the top. They'll have to go right up to the CEO, which is why it's crucial that CMOs have that relationship, not just with the CFO, but with the CEO, and just more broadly with the C-suite, which so few of them do these days. Only 58% of CMOs actually have that relationship with the CFO or the C-suite, which is when you think about the amount of value that marketing adds, it's much more than any tangible asset. The fact that these people aren't actually at the boardroom table or having those kind of trusted relationships with the CEOs, I think is a real chance missed, and at best and at worst, it's a bit of a worry.
And I think both you raise a very valid point here, which is internally within organizations, alignment is the biggest issue. And I think when we do have alignment, like in this case, this is what is possible.
Let's move on to some other cases. What else stood out for you? Pedigree. Go on then, Gurdeep.
Look, we won't go into the numbers because, they're fantastic. 23% increase in sales of Pedigree dog food, 218% increase in Caramello adoptions, and all of that broke the stigma
and this
towards...
one gold, was it?
This one a gold.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the insight. This particular dog breed, the Caramello, which is a mixed breed, not a Pedigree, was the most recognized and loved dog in the country, but 90% less likely to be adopted because it wasn't a Pedigree. And I think Pedigree were really brave in what they did, which is actually go out there and create a new Pedigree and redefine the entire category and grew the sector as well. I think it's amazing. Emma, what do you think?
I mean, look, I absolutely love this case study just from a sort of just taking my creative hat off for one moment. It's just such a brilliant example of, growing the market. And they grew the market by essentially inventing a new, not breed of dog, but a new pedigree. And obviously their pedigree, and they've invented a new pedigree. So it's a beautifully elegant solution. And
it's smart.
It's really smart. But the thing is, they do this almost every year.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the work they did a few years back, in New Zealand, where, a teenager was leaving home and they were saying, get a dog. And actually that speaks to a point that I wanted to make more broadly, which is really brilliant creative work. And it doesn't have to be big budget at all. It comes from brands that have inculcated a creative culture within the organisation. When you need an idea, short term, as in not short term, but, if you don't have a lot of time, if you don't have a lot of money, it's no good trying to do that from a standing start. You have to be a creative organisation. And I think Pedigree have shown that, this kind of work is created and is bought by the clients because they have fermented that culture of creativity. Same as IKEA, right? I just want to mention IKEA for a second.
Yeah.
So they got a bronze in effectiveness for a campaign called You Up. And what they did was it's so low cost, but absolutely brilliant. They sent direct messages, DMs, text messages to people at 1:30 in the morning. Anybody who replied got a deal on a new IKEA mattress. It's just so, again, that's born of an insight. And so much of the really great work is born of an insight. And also it's born out of all of this work that's really effective, has an emotional hook that connects with people. And I just want to say something on this. So many people, and I think, sorry to say it, but creatives are especially guilty of this. They see creativity and effectiveness as two completely different things. And I would love to say that actually the very best creative work is effective, and the most effective work is highly creative because it contains an insight, it contains that emotional hook. It's not that kind of boring, logical left brain stuff that people think, oh, I've got to do that, it's effective, which has got a very low level of creativity in it.
It's efficient, but it's not necessarily effective.
It may be efficient, but we can get into a long debate about that. But I think
it's day 5 of Cannes.
It's day 5 of Cannes. We don't need that. But so even the IPA have data which shows that creative work has 3 times the impact and effectiveness of non-creative work, and that's IPA data. So I would just say to everybody out there, including creatives, effectiveness and creativity can go hand in hand. It really doesn't need to be an either or.
Can I just add to that? I'd close this with, and to all those marketers listening today, if you want to create work that's memorable, has resonance, and is effective, allow your agencies and your internal agencies to make you feel uncomfortable, right? Allow them to be brave, because unless the work they give you, the ideas they give you, take you out of your skin and make you feel uncomfortable a little bit, you're never going to produce anything that's really going to have memorability, resonance, and be inspirational out there. So, you know, don't second for second best, you know. Allow them to take you out of your comfort zone.
And unless the work is noticed, unless it is distinctive, the rest of it is academic. It's never going to be effective if people don't notice it.
It's huge. Also, one of the things that Mark Ritson and Byron Sharp agreed on.
Good
on
God,
Monday.
they agreed on something else.
5 things.
Crikey.
But the distinctiveness bit is so important, and actually has come through a lot this week about, and again, it's a sort of second order effect of AI and the rest of it. But distinctiveness has been a real issue at the moment, and you know, we all end up circling around the same old topics, but it's because the same old topics keep being important in new ways.
What did you call it? You had a word, blandness or something. What did you call it?
Yeah, it's called blanding. Hashtag blanding, when all the work out there somehow looks the same. And I think it's because it's being generated automatically. I don't think it's gone anywhere near a creative department. But just on sort of, you know, same problems, but, you know, in different ways as technology evolves. So, you know, this wouldn't be a podcast without one of us mentioning AI. So I just want to say, actually, work that is kind of coherent, brands that have a coherent sort of message are going to be picked up by AI much, much more successfully than brands that are sending out lots of different kind of messages, because AI can recognize, it's looking for that, not consistency, so that's matching luggage, but that coherence of messaging. And that's much more likely to be surfaced in this kind of like zero-click era that we've now entered into. So I would just say that everything is now a touch point for your brand. Everything you do needs to fit into the brand message, that emotional storytelling message, regardless of the media and regardless of the job it's doing. Because if your brand is sending out differing signals, if it's not coherent, AI will not pick up on it.
That's a fantastic place to leave it. Emma, Gurdeep, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
That's all we have time for the final day of Cannes Lions. Thanks to all of our amazing guests for joining us today and through the week. This is our last daily episode of the festival, but the fun doesn't stop here. The good news is we have some really exciting content coming up in the next few weeks, recorded right here in the Cannes Lions studio. So be sure to follow us if you haven't already. And to read even more content from Cannes Lions and the Creative Impact content stream in particular, then check out WARC's free daily newsletter. Thanks for listening.